Hi, I'm Lois Haggard from the New Mexico Department of Health. This is part 3 of the training video series for developing an ibis-q query module. We're going to look at the ibis-q.cfg or config file. The config file is located in the ibis-q backend folder on the ibis-q server. I have my Q drive on my computer mapped to the ibis-q folder on the server. And in that ibis-q folder is a Q modules directory, and in there we'll find the StatePop folder, and that's where we want to look for in the StatePop folder for this .cfg file. At the top of the CFG file are a few lines that are pretty simple once you know what they are. Home path is the path to the folder where the config file is located. Now notice that this is the E drive. This is because it's the E drive on the ibis-q server. My computer has a Q drive that is mapped to that ibis-q folder on the server. But from the server's point of view, that ibis-q folder is on the server's E drive. So it's in E:ibis-q Q modules StatePop. That's where the config file is located. This work path is just a folder that's also in the ibis-q folder. That's where your SAS temporary files get written. And you'll want to go in there and clean those out every once in a while. If SAS doesn't shut down gracefully, it'll leave a file in there. This next line is the SAS path. This is the path to the data file for the StatePop query module. And this is again from the perspective of the server. It's in the ibis-q SAS data final folder, and the name of the data set is StatePop 00_06. Now this SAS path and SAS data are for the numerator data set. SASPOP and SASPOP data are for the denominator data set. Well, this is a population data set, and we're just querying it to sum up counts. So it is our numerator data set in this case, even though it is a population data set. And we don't have a population data set, so I've commented these rows out with a hash sign. The next line, SAS bin, is the path to the SAS program. So ibis-q submits a program to SAS, and it does it on the command line, and it needs to know where the SAS executable file is located. Next, we have some lines in the config file that I'm just going to tell you not to worry about right now. These two lines are the same for every config file, and these are more advanced topics than what we have time to cover in this video. My advice to you is just leave them alone. This is all the rest of the config file. There are some instructions up here, and then these 3 lines are the lines that are most important. I call this the crosswalk because it is a crosswalk from the SAS data set to the dimension in the front end IBIS and to the population data set. And this crosswalk area down here has a comment that helps you remember what these values are. Also, one thing about this file that is very, very, very important to remember is that it is space delimited. So every field in this file must have one space between it and the next field, or the next value. It can't have 2 spaces. It can't have a tab. It has one space. That's how ibis-q reads this file. Okay, so for this crosswalk area down here, the first field is a value. It's a numeric value. These used to be used by ibis-q in an older version, but they're not. The actual value isn't important anymore, but it still looks for a value in this first field. It can be any value. The next field is the name of the numerator variable in the SAS data set. So our variable names were year, state, county, and I think it was pop count. Pop count isn't in this data set. These are just the dimension variables. We'll deal with pop count in another query backend file. So this is the SAS data set numerator variable name. This is the dimension name in the in the ibis-view dimension XML file. This is the value that's in the name element. Not the name of the file, the value in that file in the name element. The next field here is the name of the variable in the SAS denominator data set. We don't have a denominator data set in this case. This next field is a label. It can be anything. You just can't leave it out. This type 1 variable has two possible values, and this is where the instructions up here come into play. For type 1, the two variables are NUM for a numeric variable or CHAR for a character variable. The next field is called type 2, and these are the codes for type 2, and all of these are categorical variables. These other types are for more advanced topics, and we'll get into those in other videos. Finally, the last field in this data variable crosswalk is the length field. This is the SAS length, so it's the number of bytes, I guess it is, required to store the SAS variable. We just put a default of 8. Storage isn't a big deal anymore. If this were a character variable, it would have to be the maximum length that the character variable could assume, that the variable value could assume. And that's it. That's our config file in a nutshell. This is the end of developing an IBIS query module part 3, the StatePop dataset config file.